Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an airline pilot, and today I want to answer one of the most asked questions I got in the comments over the past couple of weeks. Am I going to cover the Flight Sim Studios Embraer update that released recently? In this update, Flight Sim Studios has finally delivered the first version of the custom FMS that was originally promised for 3 years ago when you bought the product. I want to be very clear from the start of the video. Whenever I cover an add-on, I will always approach it openly, see how it performs, and then rate it accordingly and in accordance with the developer's advertised features. That's why I gave, for example, the Latin VFR Airbus pretty good ratings back in the day. Even though they weren't remotely anywhere near as a high-fidelity simulation, they still did exactly what the developer advertised. Why would I rate a product bad? Because it doesn't do what it is not supposed to do. There have only been very few add-ons that actually got a negative rating from me, and one of them was the Flight Sim Studios E-Jets. Let's start with a bit of background, because history doesn't just disappear with time. It all started with my pre-release coverage, where I took a close look at their adverts and their product pages, which did not match the actual software provided in any way. This led to Flight Sim Studios changing the product pages and adding big banners to them, advising people that they were early alpha releases and did not include the advertised features yet. Perfect, so they learned, right? More on that in a moment. When the plane finally released, I reached out to a real-life E-Jet captain to join me on the live stream, because, after all, I was not an E-Jet pilot, so if I'm criticizing something on a high-stakes level, I wanted the expertise of someone who knew the actual airplane. The results were devastating. The plane couldn't do anything, not even a basic altitude hold function worked, let alone anything meaningful else. It could fly a heading. That's something for starters. After about 2 hours of livestream, we both came to the conclusion that this wasn't just an early access release as advertised by Flight Sim Studios. In the past 17 years, I've been alpha and beta testing for many flight simulation companies, and I had my hands on many first editions of software that got issued to testers, and I can hands down say that this E-Jet was in a way worse condition than anything I ever held in my hands. Just that this time I wasn't just helping as a beta tester, but I was using publicly released products that you actually had to pay money for. This was hands down the worst product I've had in 17 years of flight simulation, and I wasn't the only one who thought so. Everywhere on Flight Sim YouTube, the E-Jets received incredibly negative feedback to a point where the developers started sending out emails to content creators asking them to not cover their products anymore, and in some cases even take videos down simply because it would hurt their business. The official people in the Flight Sim Studios Discord soon started slandering me, as covered in this particular video. After that, Martin, the CEO of Flight Sim Studios, and me got on a call and settled the matter, and I was assured that this gentleman whom I covered in this particular video would not actually be part of the Flight Sim Studios team, but a mere community moderator. Well, nowadays this gentleman officially posts on behalf of Flight Sim Studios on their Discord, so I don't know what I'm supposed to think. I'm blurring his username here because I agreed that the matter would be solved back in the day, though that was under the premises that this gent would not be anyone official of Flight Sim Studios. Nowadays, assuming he might not have been an official back then, I have to at least conclude that such behavior does not disqualify someone from still becoming an official later on. Despite having everything that I just told you about in the past couple of minutes, I still wanted to give Flight Sim Studios a chance though. After all, everyone can make mistakes and learn from them. And Flight Sim Studios seemingly did. They released better products later on. Just think of their 727, which I gave really good review, and for which I even created a full tutorial series. I also kept covering the E-Jets as they kept getting improved, and you guys, the community, even held these videos in pretty high regards, as is obvious by the number of views they received. Overall, it felt like Flight Sim Studios had learned from their past mistakes and were now on the way to becoming what most people were hoping they'd become: a credible developer with good products on their hands. But then something happened. One day I was browsing the Flight Sim Studios website looking for information on one of their products, and I came across something new. Hidden on the very bottom of their website was now something they called the Content Creator Policy. So let's have a very quick look at that. This is the Flight Sim Studios website, and when scrolling all the way to the very bottom, then you can find that down here, Content Creator Policy. And this is one of the biggest F-bombs you could possibly send to anyone who might be willing to advertise your products and generate free revenue for you in their spare time that I can possibly think of. So what is in the Flight Sim Studios Content Creator Policy? After some general marketing blah blah, here's the first clause that matters. In most cases, using our products, artworks, videos, music, logos and other intellectual property without our permission is illegal and a violation of our rights. Now we continue a little bit further down. The thing is written rather cleverly and most of it looks logical. Things like all content must be appropriate for the audience. Or content must have no commercial, i.e. monetary objective. Even though I wonder how websites like FS Elite, which clearly have a commercial background, are featuring FSS products now. I never saw the big fat disclaimer that FSS demands on such websites either. That's that one down here. If you feature their content, you have to add that to your videos. But paragraph 1.8 is where the real F-bomb lies in. You may not use any Flight Sim Studios intellectual property in any matter that is derogatory to FSS or that may damage the value, reputation, or goodwill of Flight Sim Studios or its products or brands as determined by Flight Sim Studios. You remember when I told you earlier that FSS asked content creators to take videos down because they would hurt their business? Now we've got this clause which effectively says, if we Flight Sim Studios determine at our sole discretion that this video damages our value, our reputation or goodwill, you have violated our intellectual property and we can sue you for that. Which now effectively puts this content creator on par with a pirate rat who downloaded the product illegally, also violating Flight Sim Studios intellectual property. And all of that for something as simple as pointing out bugs which make your during the usage of the product. Where does damage the reputation or goodwill draw the line? Does calling out bugs damage Flight Sim Studios' reputation? Does it damage their goodwill? What does goodwill even mean here? I wanted to confirm that my own understanding of this clause is not going down a completely wrong road, and so I simply asked ChatGPT for its interpretation as well. And yes, I know about its limitations, but it is usually quite good to give you a general direction. Now here's what ChatGPT says. In legal language, goodwill usually means the public's favorable perception of a business and its products. Now, if we do scroll down a little bit further to section number 2 down here, as determined by Flight Sim Studio makes it worse. This part is a big red flag. It effectively means if we don't like what you say, we can decide it harms our goodwill. That is not an objective standard. It gives them unilateral power with no neutral test. Now, after some more blah blah in the content creator policy, let's scroll down to section number 4. Normally, before releasing a video like this, a good journalist would give it to the other party to give them the opportunity to comment on the allegations. But since Flight Sim Studio directly says in section 4 that they do not want to be sent any content and will delete it without review in this very content creator policy, I will refrain from doing so and move right to section number 5, where Flight Sim Studio threatens legal action for violating or misuse of their intellectual property as defined in this policy. Summarizing, this entire policy is basically designed to threaten any content creator with lawsuits for violation of intellectual property, the same thing as being a pirate rat, if their content is critical of Flight Sim Studio products and may in any way show them as negative. But here's the best thing. The entire policy is most likely legally void anyway. A policy like this cannot be unilaterally introduced by a single party. The only way to enforce a policy like this is by both parties agreeing on the policy. This would typically happen through a checkbox during the purchase or the installation of the product. All of you know the "I've read this EULA blah blah blah" thing. In any case, Such a policy cannot be introduced post-purchase, especially but not limited to the fact that Flight Sim Studios simply added it silently to the very bottom of their website and did not even attempt to inform content creators about the existence of this policy. They just quietly updated the EULA to add the thing and then added the policy to their website. Since the policy did not exist when I bought the product, I never had to agree to it either. So it technically speaking isn't binding to me or to any other content creator who had the product up to the point where this policy came out on January the 1st, 2024. And it still is questionable if the policy is binding to anyone who bought it thereafter either, because of the EULA of shops like Aerosoft do simply not refer to the Flight Sim Studios EULA, and therefore it is questionable if that thing would be binding at all. The installation process through Aerosoft One itself does also not require you to tick a box that you agree with the developer's terms again, but just with Aerosoft's. Apart from all this, the content of the content creator policy itself is also highly doubtful, and I highly doubt that courts would let paragraph 1.8 stand like this. Any good lawyer that might have written such a policy in the first place would of course have advised Flight Sim Studios that this is the case, yet they decided to publish this policy anyway. So what can we conclude from this? Flight Sim Studios publishes a content creator policy which basically says if we do not like your content, we are going to sue you for violation of our intellectual property. Legally, this is seriously questionable and morally absolutely out of place. After the whole EJet release disaster, I hoped Flight Sim Studios would have learned from their mistakes and improved. Their 727 as well as their latest couple of EJets updates in the recent year have shown that they have the ability to be competent developers and, in case of the 727, produce good products. When I opened my channel, I did that with the intention to offer my unfiltered opinion and giving products fair ratings. Integrity is as important to me as sharing my knowledge with you guys. I've always held these values up high and will continue to do so in the future. Therefore, I will never agree to a policy that restricts the freedom of speech in a way that Flight Sim Studios does with their content creator policy. If other content creators do not mind such a muzzle, that's fine with me, and therefore I'm sure you will find plenty of coverage on the recent EJet update here on YouTube and elsewhere. However, I will refuse to promote a developer's products who threatens me with legal action if they do not like my verdict on their product. And you should ask yourself if you really want to buy somebody's product who employs such practices. There is plenty of competition available which encourages independent reviews, and I will continue to support these companies who support independent reviews. Luckily, we live in a world where there are so many great products available for our simulators that we are not forced to buy from a single developer. We have the choice. This year alone, we're expecting more than one high-fidelity add-on to release every single month. This includes regional jets, of which we already have many great ones, such as the Just Flight RJs or the Aerosoft CRJ, and of which we're going to get even more this year, like Synaptics A220, while of course options like the PMDG 737 and Phoenix A320 are always available as well. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. As always, like, comment and subscribe, and then I'm really looking forward to see you all again on the next one.